All right, thank you so much everyone for joining us tonight. This is Still Moon Art Society's Shedding Light Talk series. My name is Adrian Amendanyo. I'm the Stewardship Programs Manager here for Still Moon. And we're very grateful to have Jolene Andrew join us tonight to be talking about her project, Can You See Beaver? And I'd like to very gratefully acknowledge that all the activities that Still Moon Art Society does is on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'd also like to acknowledge the places where I have been born, where I've been raised, the unceded and ancestral territories of the kw'a, the kwétsi, and the Semiahmoo nations. Sorry. And so, yeah, without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Jolene, and she'll be able to talk more about what she'll be talking about with us tonight. Thank you so much, Jolene.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's just going to be a real natural kind of conversation, I think, so questions are welcome. I'm Jolene Andrew. I'm Gitksan Witsuwit'en. I grew up in northern BC in the village of Woodset, my mother's village. So my Witsuwit'en grandmother, her name was Elizabeth Michelle, but she passed away when my mom was 13. My mom is Laura, and my grandfather is Gitksan from Kispiox. His name was Alfred Mitchell. And the reason why we do the introductions like that as Indigenous people and with the land acknowledgement, it's not at all about acknowledging that you're not on your own land. The introduction and the acknowledgement is to ground us in our roots and make sure that if we're not in our own lands and territories, that the people who are welcoming us, whose work we're doing this stuff on, they know we're here. We introduce ourselves, and even if no one's there to welcome us, and like by canoe, we still salute the ancestors. We still pass by and give thanks and offerings to the ancestors and ask for protection and safe passage. So really the custom of land acknowledgement is not just about saying that we're not on our own land. It's really something very deeper, and I always try to say that there are a lot of people that don't understand why we do the land acknowledgement, like Richmond City Council.
Surrey as well, actually. Jolene, I don't know if you've heard, but there was a councillor maybe a few weeks ago, and a few months ago, and that tried to pass the notion of doing a land acknowledgement for all city council meetings, but it was voted down. And and Doug McCallum was like, we don't need to, because we treat the First Nations better than anyone else in the province.
Supposedly. Oh my God.
So what he said, yeah, it's very, very tragic. So
oh, that's interesting.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no, so and I guess I'm part of my professional life is to do that work in developing reconciliation strategies and change, striving for policy change. But I'm really lucky. I guess getting to the relation part and where the roots of the story too go back almost 20 years. When I met Carmen in Collingwood, I ran a canoe program there for a long time. So, Collingwood was always calling on me to try and support, Indigenous community development initiatives. And at Collingwood, great community of artists with Carmen, thankfully, getting connected to Carmen and Yoko, always pushing me to create arts engagement opportunities in community. So I'm grateful to Carmen and Yoko for always kind of standing behind me and kind of pushing me forward. Yeah, thank you. So, coming from a small place and moving to the big city to go to school, and just realize how diverse the diaspora of Indigenous people were here in the city, because it's so big, was fascinating to me. I come from a very small town, small place, lots of racism still. But I've always been very conscious. Like, it does go back to my grandpa and all the hereditary chiefs that stood up in the Delgamucus Dayway court case to say, we belong to this place and you have no rights to control our lands. And so they lost, our chiefs lost the first time, but they appealed it and went to the Supreme Court, and then of course won their rights at title. And it's, if you look at the court case, it's quite silly, the arguments that were trying to be made back then about you know, why we weren't a people. So if that's something you want to learn about, you can go check out that Delgamucus versus a Queen. So it's always been kind of ingrained in me, I think, to be aware of the land. And it was always kind of confusing to me why we experienced so much racism, because I loved our art. My mom went to Gitksan carving school. I don't think she finished completely, but she did. I remember her carvings. I remember seeing them. I remember seeing her cut up hands. And my uncle went to the same carving school. I think they were in the last, like, his last year was her first year, I think, something like that. So yeah, I'm really grateful for this time with my uncle. We're having a lot of fun. We get a lot of good laughs in there, looking at the pool. But I think since I was really young, I've always tried to find solutions to figure out, like, why people don't appreciate us more for our creativity and our technology and our knowledge, because I thought it was the coolest thing. You know, so when everywhere I went, and I didn't travel much when I was little, but I always was really conscious and aware because of the laws that were instilled in me, being at a young age in the fee system, knowing about those territorial, those customs and protocols where you don't go to someone's territory without asking first, and how our social system is really enveloped in laws that bind us to the land. The land guides us. The land is what shapes us, right? Can't shape the land. That's really funny when you look at agriculture and you see all the circles and all the squares, and it's just all like, yeah, it's so odd, I think. So when I came to Vancouver, of course, I was always looking for the Indigenous people, looking for the stories, looking for the connection, and wanting to be respectful in this place. And luckily, getting involved with a canoe program, I was in my, I think in my second year, in my second year of teaching at the Native Indian Teachers Education Program at UBC, when I started volunteering at the canoe club, because I actually wanted my brother to attend because he was so deathly shy. He never ever left his house. So I wanted him to get out and meet people. And so I volunteered and told him to come because he's always wanting me to spend time with him. And I wanted to do healthy things, good cultural things. And volunteering there long enough, they just kind of were like, can we hire you? Can you just like stay? So, you know, from there, being introduced to the canoe, and my first cultural teacher here was West Nahaney. His traditional name is chexw. If you ever get to see him at events and stuff, he's a wonderful speaker, beautiful singer. He plays the flute, and chexw translated is keeper of laws. Like he helps with protocols of laws. And you know, the more Squamish and Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh people that I met in university and in community, you know, just so generous with their knowledge and time. And yes, to kwétsi, Semyamu, Witsuwit'en. I heard this one elder stand up from Witsuwit'en one time, and she was like, you know, we've always been kind, and we act from love, and we've always been generous, and we've always taken care of people, and we still do. You know, and it's in that spirit that people need to really think into, what does reconciliation mean to them. But yes, early on, those having the cultural teacher, Squamish teacher, and those circles, the canoe families, really, I guess, spanning all the way from chexw all across Vancouver Island, was just a real gift. Yeah, and so when I was working, what I actually, you know, with Still Moon was, you know, Carmen's stewardship with Still Moon, you know, was a real driving force too. That just made me, you know, really appreciate, well, even though we're in the city, there's stuff to be done here. Like, and being in the city, I wanted more visibility. I knew that if we wanted Indigenous people to come to Collingwood, that they needed to see themselves and feel welcomed and not feel discriminated or judged. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be beautiful if there was an art installation that was kind of like an eagle, kind of right over Collingwood. Like I was picturing something giant, you know, over Collingwood or in the neighborhood somewhere. That would be a symbol of protection and that symbol of protection would be like, you know, Indigenous people taking care of the land, right? And yeah, so I always kind of imagined that, and there were things that Collingwood was trying to do. One year at their Collingwood days, they asked me, "Oh, what do you think? You know, was part of the theme, or how can we be inclusive of the Indigenous narrative?" And I was like, "Well, Collingwood, right where it sits, used to be a lake, right? So it was probably the beavers that, you know, kind of started that, you know." So I drew I drew a little, oh, I should find it. I should have thought to grab it. I do have the original inked drawing. So it was, yeah, it was rain riding a big tricycle, because tricycle is one of the things that Collingwood uses in its images, kind of. It's kind of a wheel, so it's kind of a pioneering kind of like image, but it was Jada riding on the Brain's back on the tricycle, and then there was a beaver and a frog sitting on the front in a basket or something like that. So that was how I, you know, just trying to imagine what was there before, trying to imagine the land before the roads and the buildings, trying to imagine, you know, what the animals need, and especially, of course, with the ravine there and Still Creek. Yeah, so it just kind of, you know, and that was over 10 years ago. Getting that kind of like, how do we convey and, you know, more visibility. And so when I, you know, years later, working at another neighborhood house, you know, doing community development, trying to build, I had what it was called a resurfacing history program. And so that was based on trying to build capacity of urban Indigenous people, to build a good practice of stewarding the land, even though we're not from here, most of us. How do we be good guests, right? On territory it's not our own. And part of that too was to build capacity of community members, Indigenous community members, to learn about plants and medicines. I was really lucky to grow up around teachers that had that knowledge. and, you know, finding more teachers, of course, people like Cease. Cease, the first time I ever saw Cease was when she came into a workshop, and this is when I started with the canoe program, and she just came in and laid out all these medicines, and I was like, oh my God, I love this person. So she's also a part of this project, which I'll get into in the update. So yeah, resurfacing history, it was all about building capacity of, it was mostly women, but there was some men that came along to get familiar with medicines and how we can use them to heal, and have some of our own self-determination in the city, because that's what self-determination is, having a say over our health and our well-being, and our access to the things that we need. So yeah, at Mount Pleasant, you know, it was kind of a cascade, I guess. So always trying to center, like in resurfacing history, always trying to center, how do we learn how to make sure to be good guests. Part of it, we went to interview someone at Musqueam who was in charge of land and title, and his name was Jim. Oh shoot, my COVID brain. I'm so forgetful. I used to know his traditional name just like that. It might come to me. But he does a lot of work. Like he helped with the Hepe, the Indigenous Focus School naming ceremony. But yeah, we sat with him, and wow, you can book a 15-minute presentation and they'll find somebody to deliver it. But the history that they recount predates the last ice age. Their people have stories of when the ice came, and then they moved, and then when it left, they came back, and how their laws were formed. So fascinating. And you know, to have a real conversation about, you know, not about asking permission to be doing the type of work we were doing, but just to learn, you know, that saying that says, like, when in Rome, right, you do as the Romans. So, you know, when in Coast Salish territory, you know, you do your best, right? And that's where language comes up too. Language is really important. And I thought, oh, like, I wonder if they're okay with non-Indigenous people or non-coastal people speaking Hunkamanam. You know, I kind of was curious because, you know, you're seeing, like I've seen, not like, even in my own territory, non-Indigenous person knowing my language better than most of us, right? Because they spend all their time learning it. Because they have the ability to do that. That's a privilege, to have the time, because we're all wound up tight in this capitalistic system, right? But I thought about it, and if I were at home in my own hometown of Smithers, and a non-Indigenous person recognized me and said Hadit to me in my own language, I would feel quite good, actually. So, you know, there's all kinds of shifts that happen. Anyways, yeah, so about the language, and then, you know, and then of course, what happened was, the executive director at the time, Jocelyn Hamill, and also she's a coach to me, a life coach to me, and an executive coach. It was Canada's 150, and for the longest time, I haven't, as long as I can remember, I've never celebrated Canada Day. I remember getting mad at my parents when I was young because they were celebrating, and I was like, what are you celebrating for? This is insane. but I get Canadian pride. I get that there's a lot of people that have come here, that have taken refuge, that love this place for the same reasons we do, probably, right? Anyway, so she didn't ask me to throw a Canada Day celebration, but she was like, what can we do instead? Because of course there's lots of grants for Canada's 150 plus. So I said to her, I said, well, we need to commemorate what a true and good relationship would look like. I want, you know, and I was like curious myself, like, was there any early reciprocal relationships that would honor the Indigenous knowledge and contributions? Because that's the one thing that's missing from our history, right? Is that Canada thinks that they deserve taking all the profit, and that, you know, we need to pick up our bootstraps, right? Meritocracy. But really, of course, we all know that the fortunes and richness that comes from this country is all at the sacrifice of Indigenous lives, genocide, right? Yeah, so when she asked me, I kind of was like, maybe there's an area, maybe there's a spot, like maybe we can do something, maybe we can put something up. And I looked into, I poured through the Vancouver archives, looking for any mention of First Nations, Indian, because of course back then they didn't use Indigenous, First Nation or Native. And the only reference in the archives that I could find were squatters that were camping where the cemetery is now on Fraser. So, you know, it really makes you think like, well, that was probably their own family homestead in that place where the creeks used to run. And that was the only other thing I could find in the archives was mention of the creeks that are now all gone. What types of animals used to be there. That was the only Indigenous piece of that I could see and hear and feel when I was looking through the archives. And I went to the actual city archives, and then I went to the Mount Pleasant Library because I thought maybe they would have, you know, something. Yeah. And so didn't really come to find anything.
Right.
And then of course, you know, there's the story of the two sisters. So always trying to get in storytellers, like having, you know, the beautiful storytellers come and share. Like the story of the two sisters is one of my favorites by Wes when he tells it. And then Cease, you know, about the fire. If you don't know about the Great Fire, that would be something to look into because it was all women. It was all Squamish women by canoe that saved a lot of people during that fire. Yeah, so I called Carmen and I was like, Carmen, who's that guy that you were talking about that does all the history stuff? And she's like, oh, Bruce. So, you know, so I said, you know, she gave me his number and I dragged Cease with me and we went to visit Bruce in his house, which was fun because it's all books and all history, which is something that I love. And, you know, his book, The Visual History of Vancouver, has just an insane amount that has demarked to remember what was there pre-1850. And so one of the things that was noticeable, because you can look through the pages and see where something was found specifically, and then look to like 1930s and graph it perfectly and see where what would have been. So, and I lost my signed copy actually. I need another one, which Bruce is holding for me, so I gotta bug him about that. So at 14th and Main, there used to be a beaver dam. And of course, throughout all that research too, finding other scientists and land stewards that were, and water stewards that were really trying to protect and stand for the waterways, like the St. George Waterway people. And then of course, I was asking Carmen about her circles of all kinds of activists and stewards and scientists and stuff, which I went to one meeting, was really interesting. Yeah, so I was like, oh, what about this? Like, what about 14th and Main? And then we started noticing other, Caslow and Granville Highway. Yeah. And then there was a tea swamp where Mount St. Joseph's Hospital is. And then of course, like looking at where one of the villages used to be. We went and did a session with Cease and Bruce at China Creek North, and Bruce had a ton of history stories there about that used to be a pig farm, but of course prior to a pig farm it was a village or a family site, and then it turned into like a bike track made of wood, like entirely of wood. Like, I got to look for pictures of those. I've never looked up pictures. Yeah, so just trying to think of, how do we make sure people are educating themselves about the history, and engaging the city, because we were visiting the parks, right? And we became really involved in being advisory to some of the parks planning, like what was happening in China Creek North. I saw they were doing a bunch of construction and stuff, and they like bulldozed the side of the hill just to clear it or something. And I asked, and thanks to the connections in parks, Christoph, great ally, she was like, oh, like, I was like, what are you guys doing there? Because of course, when you see destruction, it's like when you walk in driving and then you see all the forest destroyed, right? It's like kind of jolting, right? You kind of get upset. So when I was seeing all this, like, destruction, I was like, what's going on? Oh my God, like, what are you guys doing? She was like, well, we're trying to figure out, what we should be planting there. And I was like, well, it'd be great if there was a lot of Nootka rose, like all Nootka roses. But before they could plant Nootka rose, I forget what they were going to do, but it'd be so cool if it was just all wildflowers. And then sure enough, the next spring I was driving by and it was just fully bloomed in flowers. And I was so grateful for that. But yeah, just there's so many things that kind of came together. So in and around, like, all these things are kind of happening concurrently. They never happen in any sort of order that I can piece together. But a grunt gallery came to Mount Pleasant because there was her name's Nellie. She was doing some stuff, wanting to work around the history and the stories in Mount Pleasant, which a lot of the Vancouver neighborhoods like doing, right? They want to find the elders, the people that have the stories, and they want to know. They want to remember. We want to have those memories. And so I was like, well, this is something I've been thinking about for a while, and how can we center the visibility of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh people, and really look at being in right relations with, right? And then I, mentioned the Beaver Dam, and it was, you know, and it was just right when they wanted to apply for art installation project for from the city of Vancouver, not related to any sort of colonial holiday. um, and we got it, and it was we just kind of landed on the idea, because for me community engagement is so important. I'm a community developer, so community involvement and voice and feedback and conversation, like that's where community growth happens, because people are come like this to listen and ask, and then you're building on your experiences, right? I've been telling the story about a raven and a boy, and when I'm sitting with a class or whatever group it is, I try to remind people, listen to the story and try to find what's important to you in the story, and then share after, because what's important for you in the story is different from your neighbor. And when I was going home to the school district 54, the Bulkley Valley in Wet'suwit'en territory, it was right around, it was right before all no, it was right after June after the first arrest of the matriarchs at Unistoten. And in the town of Houston, which is the town that you go to where the logging road takes you to the Unistoten. So I was in the town of Houston. I went to like a dozen different classrooms, high schools and elementary schools. So the tension was just palpable. And I asked one of the teachers, like, how are you as teachers being supported by leadership to lead dialogue? How can we have, and most of the teachers I asked a few, were just like nothing, like radio silence. How do you bring harmony in a classroom when, like there was one really harsh example this year where the teacher warned me before the class came. She said her dad is a prominent racist in town. So that, to be prepared that I might, this young lady, she's only in grade 6, I think, might be difficult, or whatever the term is, right? And I told the story, and at the end of the story, my question to the kids is, should Raven help the boy, or the people are going to suffer because he was trying to find food? And this young girl piped up and she said, let him die and let them all die. Yeah. And I was like, wow. I'm like, that's really how you feel. And, and your neighbors, they looked embarrassed, most of them, for her. And, like, yeah, it was shocking. But yeah, back to the point, which is to say, we need to share our perspectives if we want to try and get into some harmony. We really need to sit down and get different perspectives, because my knowledge alone is very little. But when we're all together, working together, a lot more can happen. Yeah, so yeah, with the storying, it's really important to listen to the stories, and witnessing. Witnessing is a big part of our culture, especially West Coast culture. To show up and to carry on those histories, our oral history, right? So that leads to some of the stuff. So initially it was like supposed to be a collaborative process with community, and then COVID came, so we couldn't have any of those community design sessions. Like we couldn't really get with community to be like, what do you think we should put at 14th and Main? Because we got permission, because there's a parklet there, to do an installation. We just didn't know what. And I guess out of all the applications for the installation projects, ours was the only one that was collaborative and community centered. So yeah, we didn't get to, it was kind of in the air. And then again, serendipitously, Leona, through Resurfacing History, had been attending Brewers Park planning sessions. So if you're on Victoria near Cedar Cottage, you'll notice that Brewers Park is completely torn apart. And the parks had consulted with Resurfacing History on how to design an Indigenous forest, food forest. And Leona went to planning sessions because her house is like 3 blocks away from that park. And Cedar Cottage wanted to build a relationship there enough so that Leona could be doing programming in the park for Cedar Cottage and the Indigenous food forest that went in, that is going in. Actually, I was there like a month ago, and it was still like tractors and dirt. Like, so it's still really like they're really doing an overhaul in that place. But I guess you need it for water, right? It's the irrigation and stuff like that. We all know how much we need that water for our gardens. Yeah, so she went to all these meetings, and she had flagged it saying they're going to cut down 2 cedar trees. And we're like, oh, well, wow, okay, like how? And asking the question of how does parks consult with nations about that? Like, I think there should be a complete ban on cutting cedar trees. Even in the city, I don't know why people would cut them down, or cut down any trees, I guess. But these 2 trees were growing way too close to this person's house. They had to come down. And Leona was determined. She's like, I want those trees. And if you met Leona, or probably have through any of the other programming Carmen has done, yeah, you can really appreciate her passion and her position on the things that she wants. But she wanted those trees. So she worked with parks to coordinate the day of when the trees are to be cut down. And I felt like we couldn't just take, like we're taught, of course, give before taking, making an offering before taking, right? So we went and we asked Wes, who again, that early cultural teacher I was telling you guys about. Wes came and we did a little ceremony, and then the city went to work cutting it down. And at that moment, I didn't know, like, we were going to use it for maybe we took the bark off. We were going to use some branches, like we were keeping the green for smudge. But then when it came down, and we kept some chunks to go into other gardens. So some of the cedar was brought to go to feed other gardens, like for Cease, and then a couple of other gardens. Actually, the Indigenous food forest that's in Strathcona, we put some of that wood there. And then Leona just said, I want Jolene to have the log. And I was like, oh my God, Leona, what am I going to do with the log? So yeah, this I was like, well, we could, I guess, use it for this installation. Because we didn't really have any idea what we were going to do yet. So with having to work quickly, Grunt Gallery, it just all kind of lined up just right, and Grunt was there to be there for the ceremony even. and we got pictures, and I guess I could have showed pictures of that, but there will be, I think, more, like there is the website, which I'll talk about. So yeah, so the log was brought here to my driveway, and last fall I asked my uncle, like, Uncle, what do you think about this project? We don't know what we're going to do. A musqueam carver, crystal sparrow, came and had dinner and kind of was giving a bit of advisory as well, as an artist and just as a creative process, like how could we be collaborative and respectful. So yeah, it sat, like, Uncle helped take the bark off then, and then of course it sat all over COVID. Um, and then come this spring, he started taking the bark off, or taking the sapwood off. But a lot happened in between that time, because the log isn't just the main part of the project, because of course we wanted to center coastal voices and history. So lots of different things were happening. Like, I originally had a coastal carver, a Coast Salish carver that was going to come and work, and I had other options for wood too, because this log is really knotty, has a lot of knots, so a lot of naughty jokes. um, um, so, you know, and then I called another carver that lived in Mount Pleasant, and he's still there, and he's the elder, and his name's Terry Starr. He's a Tsimshian carver, and Terry had this beautiful vision of doing a bowl, a giant feast bowl with the beaver on it, which I thought was just so, like, the imagery was just so beautiful. And then I was all excited about this feast bowl, and that he couldn't carve it, but that he would be an advisor of some kind. And we had, my uncle had brought a bunch of wood here. I thought that we might be able to use. But that didn't really come to fruition. So I was kind of stressing out, like, what is this installation going to be? Like, am I just gonna put sticks together and call it a dam? Like, what's gonna happen? So and throughout this, like, we'd started interviews. So if you go to the canwecbeaver.ca, canwecbeaver.ca, there's the first initial interview that was put up, and it was, I wanted to feature weavers. So it was Tracy Williams and Sonoquala Weiss, and you know, them talking about their memories. Like, I wanted to hear the pedagogy, like the practice of the hands-on, the memories in your fingers, like the nuances. And so if you can go and watch that, we recorded the interview, and then we screened it in community, and then people were able to watch the screening and then ask Sonoquala and Tracy questions, which was just really beautiful. So lots of really good, juicy knowledge and details in that interview. And then the other one that was just posted is a walking tour. So we filmed Bruce and Cease walking around Mount Pleasant, and we didn't force it. We just kind of like, where should we walk? Like, where should we go and see and look at stuff and talk? And so there was lots of areas, and of course Cease and Bruce knew them all, the wildest parts of Mount Pleasant. They knew where they were, and they knew the story. So we did the tour in Mount Pleasant, and at each site they both stopped and talked. And yeah, I really encourage you to go watch it. When Nellie sent it to me, she said she cried when she rewatched it. It really has been really fun to put this stuff together, even though it was kind of painfully slow because of COVID. But when I didn't know that we were going to get going on something like this, I was like, Cease, like, because she had during the Vancouver Mural Festival, um, she had turned my hummingbird into a virtual reality hummingbird. There's a beaver. Hi, beaver. um, so I said, "Cease, what do you think about doing a virtual reality or augmented reality beaver?" So it wouldn't necessarily be an art installation, but a QR code that you could scan and then see the beaver there at Main and 14th. So she was like, "Yeah, yeah, I could begin working on that." So that will be the installation that goes in at Mount Pleasant, and we were just going to have like a 1 day, 1 hour walk by, just to raise awareness of the project and talk to people about it. Which again, we're past due, but that's okay. But since March, the process with my uncle has been really, really fantastic. So let me join by.
Thank you so much, Jolene.
Take a walk down there.
Of course. Yeah, I guess while you do that, Jolene, would it be okay if folks maybe if they have any questions, they maybe kind of ask them now?
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah. I know that was a lot of talking. Sorry.
No, it was great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing like all the context into which kind of all this process for you, and yeah, definitely a lot of really great things that you mentioned there. So yeah, definitely no apologies. So
I know.
yeah.
See, there's 13 comments. I don't know about.
Oh, some of them have been like I was sharing some of the links that you were mentioning.
Oh, okay.
So that
Okay.
people can kind of see and
yeah.
So I guess one thing that there you go. One thing I kind of had, one question I had in regards to this project, Jolene, was like, I guess like when it comes to like, reaching out to the community in terms of like kind of gathering more information or resources, like how do you feel like it kind of became an organic process, or were you like actively seeking out people that you kind of knew you wanted to work with? And again, and ultimately, how do you kind of relate it to kind of the stories of the beavers kind of within the context that we're kind of working in?
Yeah, it was really natural. I mean, we got to go with our connections, right? Where we're feeling related to. And that's how I honestly try to frame it to community organizations as well. They're like, "Do you know somebody? Or can you come and do this thing?" I'm like, you need to go to your community members that are there that you already know. Like, stop asking me. Like, build your relationships. So it really is about just connecting into the ones that are already there. And the community will grow around, right? More people will get involved. Yeah, it wasn't forced at all. I mean, you'd hope you'd have this vision and then everything would go perfect, and then it was really difficult because it's really hard to ask Indigenous people to show up when we're going through so much crisis. We were already going through so much crisis before COVID, with the opioid epidemic and suicides and constant death. Like, that's what it's like. And there's been a lot of death during COVID, and then with the unmarked graves being revealed publicly, because every Indigenous community has stories like that. So we weren't surprised, but it was re-traumatizing to think about those children. But yeah, being relational about it for sure, and just allowing whatever needs to happen. And that's how it was with oh, there I am looking at myself. And that's how it was with coal. It just kind of, I can, my uncle put together this beautiful book. So I'm going to mute here and
Jolene, I think I'm not sure if your connection, or sorry, if your mic is on your phone. Well, it sounds like we can't hear you, but we can definitely see where you're showing us. That's pretty remarkable. Wow. Whoa.
Jolene, we can't really hear what you're saying. It's not coming through, but yeah, what Jolene was telling me the other day was that they figured out how to make faces out of all the knots. Oh, now we can hear you.
He had quite a few different drafts actually for each section of the log. It was like maybe 4.
Wow.
There's his beaver. So these are my uncle's designs. There's the beaver again. And so that's where he is down there working. Contemporary, of course, it's not like a symmetrical. I can hear myself echoing. Yeah, it's not symmetrical. They're all over. And we were fascinated, of course, by thinking into where Northwest Coast shapes come from. You can see beautiful ovals and ovoids and U shapes.
Oh, fascinating. And this Jolene is
Yeah, so there's an otter on there. So my uncle named it Supernatural Mystical Animals and Birds. There's the otter.
very apt title.
There's the owl. So that gives you an idea of about some of the process. I don't know. Like this is
Eagle.
Thunderbird. There's a frog down there. I'm working on this guy. My computer's, I can hear my voice up there too. Here's the owl.
Wow.
I don't know if we can see it so well. It looks great from far away when you can see the whole raven. Beautiful grain designs. I don't know if I want to reveal a beaver yet. You guys might have to come see that in person.
Yeah, that definitely this is the teaser.
My uncle put the teeth in the mouth on today.
Oh my gosh.
So he looks cool. There's a cool face, the otter.
Wow.
So you can see the mouth, the teeth, the nostrils, nose. Yeah. So
Wow.
my uncle's here. I don't know if you want to ask him any questions.
Oh, we had one question, Jolene, actually, earlier. And this is from Jonathan. And Jonathan was asking, what was your research like in weaving this narrative? Basing it on the history of the area, what perspectives did you find most interesting relationship-wise?
Based on the history of the area, what was the narrative? Sorry, I missed part of it. I don't know why I can't. Just hang on.
Yes.
The sound is really funny.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure.
I can't hear you too well from my phone for some reason. Oh, I know why. Speaker. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, that's better.
Oh my gosh.
Just
great.
hang on a second.
Of course.
There's my uncle.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Eric. Nice to see you.
Hello.
This is Carmen saying hi. I don't know if you can see me, but yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, incredible work. Thank you so much for sharing right now.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
So sorry, the question again?
Yes, I can, I'll repeat it for you, Jolene.
Okay, thank you.
So it's from Jonathan. What was your research like in weaving this narrative? Basing it on the history of the area, what perspectives did you find most interesting relationship-wise?
I think for me, it's been thinking about my relationship to the beaver. My clan is the frog clan, but my grandpa was actually a beaver, Tsayu. So I think trying to understand the really important role that the keystone species played, and how, like the beaver being at the bottom of the pole for me, because he's holding everything up, kind of like how the ecosystem works, right? How important the beaver is to providing for so many other animals. But then thinking into who is beaver now? Who is acting like beaver now? Who's being kind of like providing? And then of course thinking about, you know, the Coast Salish people, like they've been taking care of this land forever. So, you know, that's relationally how I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan says thank you. And we had a comment from Allison saying that cedar trees are really drying out and dying rapidly in our city. And they can't imagine the impact to our host nations given the cultural significance of cedar to the Coast Salish. But would like to learn more if anyone has suggestions. Yeah, you know, for me, I definitely have this question too, thinking about like plant selections for like our restoration sites moving forward with, you know, I mean, this has been happening for decades now, but especially now, it being the front and center of, you know, climate change, thinking about what native plants we're able to use that will be able to support life moving forward with the changing climate. I'm not sure if you've had any of those discussions, Jolene, with folks that you've not that you know or in relation with, but I feel like Allison's question is maybe speaking to that in some indirect way, because yeah, the cedar issue has been happening for quite a few years, especially with the drier summers and in more sunlit areas. I guess they do pretty well in shady areas with denser canopies, but yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts or?
That's the important part about biodiversity and ecosystems, right? Actually, the other day, I was feeling kind of heavy because like of Lytton burnt down.
Of course.
And it was the day after Cancel Canada. And me and my uncle went to the museum, and if you go there, you can visit
their installation called Sanctuary. And it's all about that. It's all about the impacts of climate change and how we can sequester carbon by making sure that we're creating biodiversity and protecting the biodiversity in our forests, not just in the rainforest down here, but for me, of course, my heart is with the boreal forest, where my territory is, right? Yeah, so, and you know, there's so many people out there. When you think about land, it's all about food, right? It's all about, you know, food sovereignty action. Athena, what are you doing? Does mommy know you came outside? She's a runner. She's 3.
Oh,
Does daddy know you came outside? Are you sure? Yeah, there's lots of food sovereignty action happening. Mutual aid, if you want to support mutual aid of Indigenous food sovereignty movement, lots out there, lots of groups out there, trying to reduce, you know, the transport of food, of course, by growing it, and yeah, building a different kind of economy, I guess. Which again is another topic, but it's all related, right?
absolutely.
I'll take you over. So
Wow.
here he is. He's so cool.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Stunning.
So this is not done, obviously. There will be other parts. Tail have to go somewhere, but it's abstract, right? It's very abstract. And it's kind of coming full circle because it will be going up at Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House, which is, you know, it's a hub, community cultural hub for all people. So, and it kind of felt weird, like we were thinking, oh, maybe we'll bring it to Main and 14th. That's part of the installation for a day. But I think just because the life in the log is, you know, and then the intention put towards it, it has a life, right? You can't just bring it here, bring it there. You know, we're gonna put it up and not take it down, and it's gonna go, yeah, it's gonna go to Mount Pleasant.
Jolene, what are some next steps with kind of like more community engagement with going forward before it comes up, or what were you planning for when it is finished and installation?
Yeah, so when we want to reveal the augmented beaver when it gets done, of course, when this goes up, that will be a community event. Oh, there also, Jazz Whitford is a chexw poet and painter. So they will also be, they've been watching the events following the project, and they're going to come and sit with us on Friday night to kind of hear the story about the supernatural and mystical. And they're going to be a poetry respondent. So that's something to look forward to too. And Jazz has done a lot of her own work about being a non-coastal person and being a guest here. So yeah, that's also happening. Yeah, I was really hoping to try and squeeze in the storytelling, the Two Sisters storytelling by Wes Nahaney. I'm hoping, because I'm naming him, I'm hoping maybe his ears are burning. But I'd really like that to happen. But I kind of want it to be like spectacular. Like, I think maybe he should be on like the tallest building where we can film him, you know, with the sisters in the background. And there's some parts in Mount Pleasant where you can get a really good view, right? Yeah, so that's something I'm hoping will happen. But this project has dragged on. I guess dragged is not really a positive connotation, but it's taken a long time, and we're getting so close to the end. You know, and I work full time, and I have other jobs too. So I'll be happy when we can celebrate the completion of this.
Absolutely. How can we find out about those events coming up?
The events will be on the canuseebeaver.ca page. Yeah, there's an events page there, and links to to all the interviews. Even a recording how to pronounce the project that Sonokola helped us with. Noi cho kwech no kwétsi skalau is how you say it. Noi cho kwech no kwétsi skalau. And you know, there's lots of metaphors and analogies that we can make. I was getting nervous because when you look at, I'll tell you that we had yesterday. So when you're looking at the end of the log here, you can flat. So we were talking about, oh, what are we gonna, you know, I'm like, how are we gonna make that straight? And I was like, are you gonna just saw it by your eye, like a, you know, and I was joking about, you know, it's going to be like a COVID haircut. You know, you cut a little bit, and then you got to cut a little bit more, and then you got to cut a little bit more, and then it's going to get all messed up. Hopefully that won't happen, of course, but but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Any other questions?
It looks absolutely stunning. Yeah. We haven't received any yet, but let's see. Yeah, folks, if anyone wants to chime in, you can feel free to unmute yourself. You can write in the chat too, and I can read them out as well, whatever feels comfortable for y'all.
How's your beaver project going, Carmen?
Oh, well, Willoughby and I and Laura today, we were doing some test weaving with Willow. The manager at Superstore has given us permission to weave on that right next to Superstore. So we're super thrilled. Yeah, and
Oh,
to
cool.
grow our weaving. So that's actually coming along nicely. And then we were weaving a miniature RV today. We're trying to weave a Willow RV just out of small pieces, and then as a prototype for doing a giant one. So that was actually felt quite successful. Doesn't quite look like an RV yet. Because we've just been doing the, what?
You want to show it? It's very much processed.
You have it?
Well, it's in the
Let's see
backyard
it.
here. Yeah.
You know, our intent, you know, for those of you who don't know, it's called Beaver Pondering Lodging. And the idea is that we've got a giant woven living willow beaver crawling out of, or walking out of Still Creek up the bank.
Oh.
And this living willow woven RV
Oh, cool.
that is parked on the lawn, because we want to connect the displacement, the habitat displacement that's been occurred, and try to encourage like rehabilitation of the land, you know, making both the, you know, the land more welcoming both for beavers, etc., as well as humans. And so we're thinking that this RV will not be as walled in as a real RV, but more kind of open, with these, making like a place where people can hang out and play, and the little kitchen and benches. You know, people could sit in the driver's seat of this RV, and as also a way to acknowledge those facing, you know, the precarity of living in an RV, which is the reality for a lot of the folks in the neighborhood.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's
Good job.
we're having fun with it, but yeah, it's, as you can see, we've just done the internal furniture and we'll have to do the external shape next. And then once we get a prototype, then we'll do a full size one eventually. Like next year and the year after.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, when the city announced the eviction of the RVs, I kind of, there's been so much displacement, due to poverty and, or should I say, capitalism and stealing. But I called Carmen just to be like, what's going on down there? What can we do? And I know you guys are trying to build a relationship with the community.
Yeah, we went
Cool.
down.
That's
We went
awesome.
down to the protest there, and so only a few RVs left, and the protests kind of slowed down the removal of people. So that's good. But yeah, we've made quite a few friends with the RVers. So they're kind of our inside knowledge on who we should talk to and stuff like that, which is great. Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
I
I'm
wanted
just seeing
to,
a comment from Sherry.
Yeah, totally. I was just
Yeah.
going to mention that, Jolene. Yeah, would you like to
please go ahead.
respond? Oh,
No, yeah, if you want to read it.
Sure, I can read it. Yeah, so yeah, Sherry mentions, I'm from kw'atsi First Nation. I live both along the Fraser River and Yorkson Creek. There is currently a very healthy beaver family upstream the creek. I struggle with the feeling of impending doom of the construction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Do you know of any Indigenous land resistance / research groups in the Lower Mainland?
So there's some really great allies. I mean, the resistance that's against Trans Mountain, that's on Burnaby Mountain, is still there. The watch house, I understand, like people are still having a presence there up on Burnaby Mountain. There were ready for bed. Okay, I'm still in a meeting. There was a group, I don't know what they're called, but they found the hummingbirds that have stalled the project in that one area. Donna Clark, I think. Good night. I'll come up in a minute.
One of the members of that.
It's her birthday tomorrow, right? So she's like ready to go to bed. Everybody say happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I just want to say
Happy birthday, Jada.
I know
Who was
people from, this is Helen. I know that
Hi.
people from Burnaby Residents Against the Kinder Morgan, I think it's called Broke. If you look, they have a Facebook page that are allies.
Great.
BROKE.
BROKE.
And yeah, the Slay with the First Nation.
And I don't know how accessible they are, and it's social media is hard. Like Instagram is probably safe where activists can kind of go and communicate. Will George, I think, has been tracking what's been happening with the Trans Mountain, and his wife, who's Semiahmoo, Roxanne Charles. And then there's other, like, I don't know what the Fraser Basin Council is doing, but they do a lot of environmental activism and they're connected to a lot of groups. Like they literally coordinate and network people to work together. The Fraser Basin Council, which is Stalo, like farther up the river. Yeah. But thank you, was it Sherry, for your comment. And that takes time, right? That takes sacrifice of time for people to even to just bring food up there to feed the people that are taking hold wanting to have a presence.
Totally. Absolutely. Jolene, thank you so much. I just want to, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and the process and the work. Yeah, we're super grateful for your participation with us tonight.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone has any last comments, questions, we're pretty close to our time tonight. If not, we'll leave it there for tonight. And yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, well, we'll definitely be in touch about, you know, sharing about your events. Like we have the website, and so it'd be cool. Still Moon could,
Well,
you know, share across the network too. Make sure
Yeah.
people know and stay informed.
oh, hi, Clara.
And
Cool.
yeah, any last words, Jolene?
Thank you. No, just thank you so much. It's nice to see people's faces, and hopefully we can have more in-person stuff happening, right? I'd love to come weave some of that willow there, Carmen. Yeah.
Leave the
Yeah.
willow with us. You see, Clara has no hair.
I didn't see. Clara, did you shave your head?
I did. I shaved it today, and I forgot when I turned on my video. I was like, oh,
Oh, you shocked yourself.
You know how I react to those kinds of things, Claire.
Oh,
yeah. No.
Oh, we lost. Hey, Jolene, yeah, you seem to be muted right now. But I just wanted to ask you, I didn't see Bruce's talk on the website. Doesn't look like it's posted yet. Did I miss this?
oh, okay. Maybe they're getting it transcribed right now, or whatever that's called, captioning.
Right.
Maybe they're still doing that. I can send it to you as soon as it's available.
That would be great, because I'd
And
love
you can share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to watch it with you. Maybe that would be even more fun.
Oh, we should do that. That'd be great.
Okay.
Cool. Hi, Clara.
Hi, Adrian. Nice to see you.
Likewise. Looking good, eh?
Thanks.
Okay, I will go say goodnight to Jada. Okay. Oh, there she is.
There you
I
go.
love it. I love it. We got to do it at least one time in our life. Yeah.
This
I
is
did
the
it
first.
when I was 16.
All right.
So
Yeah,
free.
It feels so good. I've been like.
It looks
thinking about
amazing.
it all day.
You look amazing.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for sharing tonight. It was really
Yeah.
great to speak.
Big love to everybody, and take care out there.